Lopes fans, welcome in. My name is Brendan Williams, and this is Go Lopes Radio. Today we have episode 3 of the Behind the Program podcast series, where I'm sitting down with the people who support the men's basketball team behind the scenes and highlight all the work that they do. So, this episode, I sit down with Brady Howe, GCU's Director of Sports Medicine, who joined GCU a little over a year ago. So, we talk through some of his various experiences up to this point, an expert opinion on GCU's success over the last few years. He got a look at it the last year, also gives his input on why they'd been so successful even before he got here and what he's most looking forward to in the future. Of course, I had to ask him about Dennis Evans as well. So he talks a little bit about him and how excited he is to see him get out on the court. This is a really, really awesome episode, guys. We even get into some specific details kind of in his world about injury prevention, the modern game of basketball, treatment, kind of everything around that. So really, really hope you guys enjoy this one. And that's all for now. Tyon, take us away.
Hey, we hoop at GCU, man.
Okay, guys, I'm here tonight with GCU Director of Sports Medicine, Brady Howe. Brady, how are we doing tonight?
Great, Brandon. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for joining the program. We're going to get into a little bit what you're doing right now. You've got the gear on, so we'll save that for a later time. But let's talk a little bit about where you grew up and then eventually how you ended up getting into sports medicine. When was that moment where you're like, this is kind of what I want to do for a living?
Yeah. It's funny you asked that because, definitely a nostalgic period for me. Not just here at GCU, but I got into athletic training. The first time it was even brought to my attention was by a guy named Joel Bass at Weber State University. I mean, I knew of it. High school, I was fortunate, even with my age at that era, to have a high school athletic trainer. I went to a really good high school with a football program that was a very historic, traditional, program. So we had an athletic trainer. We loved him dearly. I learned a lot from him, but it never dawned on me until I thought that identity of mine as an athlete was over once I graduated high school. And I had a gap year where I was taking classes at Weber State University, where I'm from in Ogden, but I just started following that guy around. His name's Keith Donaldson, the high school athletic trainer, and he just let me just kind of have something to do a little bit just to see.
Sure.
Really, it was just, I don't even know why I was doing it. To be honest with you, but we had a game. It was like a fun preseason game where the high school was at Weber State Stadium. So it was kind of a cool experience for the athletes to play in a college stadium. And
Yeah.
Joel Bass just retired last month after being the athletic trainer at Weber State for 40 years. Now, if you can imagine, that's like very pioneering.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a very long, this is still a profession at its infancy stage, if you ask me. So,
Yeah.
he saw me running up and down the sidelines helping kids, and he really just was like, man, who is this kid? He's all over the place, and grabbed me aside and asked me who I was, and then he just started to introduce me to the athletic training program that Weber State had, and I'd never even thought of it. But, a year later, I get through my general classes and tried to get into the program, and that's basically how it started for me.
Yeah, that's interesting because talking with Coach Mark and Coach Jack, similar stories where they were both athletes and kind of that time was maybe just up and they're trying to find that next vehicle. And I guess almost similar to you, almost like stumbled into it, yet there was almost this, I don't know if you're the same way, but they had this like instant love for still being able to be around the game or sports and almost that next vehicle for the next part of life. Did you feel that as well? Like you can now move into that next part of your life and still kind of have sports be part of it?
Yeah, I still to this day go through different phases of it. Like it's been a blessed journey for me to this point. I really can look back and reflect at how amazing it's been. Some of it I can't quite make sense of. It's just happened because of
Yeah.
my openness to just try things and take opportunities and risks. But I don't know if I'd say it was love at first sight per se. Like, at that age, we all look at this like, man, I have to make a decision on what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I
Yeah.
know we don't have enough time on this episode to talk about that, but even for myself, I've pivoted numerous times, and it's hard to not get stuck in that quicksand of feeling like I'm in this like sunken cost fallacy, if you will, that
Sure.
like there's no way to go back and then go down a different path. But I
Yeah.
have.
Or have to take more classes. You're probably like, man,
Mhm.
I got to sit in more classes.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother conversation too, because I just finished a second master's degree last year in sports psychology, and here at GCU, I'm fortunate to be able to take some classes that I might chip away at a PhD. I don't know, but you
There you
eventually
go.
realize maybe I'm just insane to keep doing this, but then I realized that I do enjoy it that much because it keeps me learning, it keeps me engaged, it keeps me, forward thinking. And so you definitely get to a point where you're like, man, what am I doing this for? Why do I keep taking classes and putting myself through this? But just like Jack and Coach, like you do get to a point where you realize, man, sports is a medium that for so many of us, it's just a way of life.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good and a bad thing about that. The bad thing that I'm learning is that sometimes there's a hard part for many of us to detach from that love, if you will, where, it's hard to relinquish that grip of the identity
Yep.
that we're still hanging on to, that sports is who we are. It's not entirely a bad thing, but sometimes I think that there's a reason why coaches coach is because they still hang on to the life of, they wish they were still athletes
Yeah.
or still in it. And so, yeah, there's definitely, for many of us in this field, we are very rooted in being, we were aspiring athletes, and we went as far as we could. And before I even met Joel Bass, I mean, I'd been introduced to it. I just didn't realize it. I'd pulled my back lifting as a teenager. I mean, I was an undersized kid who eventually played college football. I really had no right tackling some of these dudes playing as secondary player like I did, but I've had at a bare minimum 12 broken bones. I've had 4 broken collarbones. I've fractured my jaw. I've had broken my nose. I mean, I've had my
You're a
worst
walking
one
test
was
case, is what you are.
exactly. Yeah. Eventually you just realize, man, I've met every surgeon, PT under the sun, it seems like.
Yeah.
And I was like, it just kind of groomed the runway for me to work in this business.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of your field experience. You're talking about the schooling you've kind of gone after a little bit, but you have quite an awesome resume. Spent some time with Phoenix Suns. Kind of tell us how you got there, and then I do want to have you in. You're obviously wearing your USA basketball gear, and talking a little bit about that and the work you're doing there right now.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, really quick jump into the pro setting. As soon as I graduated from Weber State, I had an opportunity to work in what's known as the G League, but it was the
Yeah.
development league at the time. So I jumped right into it. I was able to do that. And for many, that's a jump into the deep end before you know how to swim. So I was fortunate there, but that was associated with the Utah Jazz, which is a team I grew up, loved dearly. I went to finals games watching them lose
Mm-hmm.
against the Bulls. I mean, it was an honor for them to give me an opportunity. And that was another person like Joe Bass that I met, which was, his name was Brian Zettler. And he really opened the doors for me, which he was an amazing mentor for me. And, my time there led me to just more people, bigger network that led to the Atlanta Hawks. And then when I thought we were going to be in Atlanta for quite a while, the Phoenix Suns called me, and it was just that quickly. It just went boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom within a 3-4 year span. And my wife was excited because nothing against Atlanta, but it was closer to home and our family.
Yep.
And she has some family that actually are rooted in Arizona. So, we come to Phoenix to be the head strength and conditioning coach. And then after 1 year, it had some big changes from everything. I mean, brand new GM that put me in a position to be one of the youngest VPs in the NBA. And again, almost every stop along the way, I just kept thinking to myself, I just felt like I wasn't ready for all these
Yeah.
opportunities, these titles, the weight, the significance behind them. And, but it was a beautiful opportunity. So yeah, we are now obviously consider Phoenix our home. We've been here pushing 9 years now, but it was 6-7 seasons with the Phoenix Suns. And then just finished my first year now with GCU. So I'm just getting my legs underneath me about the new landscape of
Yep.
college sports. So yeah,
Ever evolving. Just when you think you get
mm-hmm.
your legs under you, yeah. Another thing.
And then yes, the USA basketball stuff, another
Yeah.
passion project of mine, but something that I've been trying to do for many years, and it's not the easiest thing to crack into. But I for a little over a year and a half now, I've been working with the U.S. national team. So I'm currently in Miami while we're filming this with the men's national team as they get ready to go to the America Cup. And so yeah, in our off season, the slow months of the GCU season with sports in the school calendar year, I am fortunate because things ramp up with USA, qualifiers and all that. So I was gone 22 days in the month of June with the 3x3 national team. We were in
Yeah.
Vienna, we were in Mongolia. So it's such a fun opportunity for me to get these chances to travel the world, to cross paths with so many amazing coaches and athletes. And so but that's currently where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. That's really truly incredible experience getting to be around the athletes, the personnel, everything. You mentioned you grew up getting to watch some of those jazz teams, so that kind of leads me to my next question. Obviously I wasn't old enough to be watching those teams, but you always hear the lore of those old NBA games. They get done with the game and they've got cold beer waiting in there. Sometimes they're smoking cigarettes at halftime. And that sounds like lore way back, but that's 30, 40 years ago, maybe even 50 at the most. So
25.
all that to say, we're in this world now where it kind of feels like everything has changed. You said you still feel like we're at the start of this. Talk to me just about your time as you've been in the industry, in the space. How has it evolved on just players taking care of themselves, investing? It seems to be the new trend, but talk a little bit about just the changes you've seen.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution. It is. It's you blink and quickly things have just evolved. Truly, it's whether it's the technology boom that we're seeing from all the little things that we all see, right? Recovery has been a very big buzzword in the last decade, and
Yeah.
it's funny because for somebody like myself who has a master's degree and over a couple decades of experience as a strength coach, it's funny that we put such a price tag and premium on these things to try to recover, but many of us don't challenge ourselves or push ourselves physically to a level that truly would require these recovery
Yeah.
strategies. We know what it feels like to be sore if we went to the gym, but
Sure.
we don't live the life of these players where you push yourself to the brink of physical exhaustion and then have to do it again tomorrow. And by the way, you have to get on a plane and you have to go to class, you have to do all these things. And
Yeah.
so there are a lot of changes that are constantly happening for good and for questionably bad, things or reasons, whether it be just business is trying to make its sales and whether they're marketing these things to us. But um, there's definitely a constant change going on around us and how we prepare athletes, how, and even for that, here's a good example I'll give you. And I said this the other day to a coach. Doctors, coaches who've been this long enough, they think they're dealing with some type of nail ailment or nagging injury. They're just like, oh, I'm good. I'll just rice it. You know what I mean? The rest, ice
Yeah.
compression, elevation. But funny thing is that was 20, 30 years ago, the guy who came up with that concept and that model. And I'm not joking when I say this year that same person came out and said, I had it all wrong. I was completely wrong. Like people are still talking about doing this model and it's not hurting anybody, but it's not doing what we thought it was. So it's amazing how even as a strength coach, a practitioner, you really name it, whatever element of this field you're a part of, whether it's a year or 30 years, things are changing so drastically that you're just like, you have to be willing to progressively push yourself, evolve, adapt, and be open enough to these changes. Because if you feel like you've figured it out, that's when the world will swallow you up and turn you upside down because you really realize these changes are very fast and rapid.
Yeah. On that topic, one question I really wanted to ask you. We were just talking about kind of modern equipment and kind of the modern athlete, the rigors that they go through. I think let's use the Suns as an example, right? In today's game, let's say I'm a opposing player and I'm playing the Suns. I have to be ready to be in a pick and roll and guard Devin Booker, be strong enough, you know, have the speed, all that. So you got to do that. Okay, so let's say you do that job, right? the ball goes the other side, and then you've got, let's just say Ryan Dunn, I'm pretty sure was a 40% 3-point shooter. You've got to close out probably 20 feet, control closeout, because he'll go right by you. And then if he misses, you've got to go in and bang around with like 3 7-footers, try to go up and get the rebound. I watched the modern basketball game and I think, how do guys buy? I mean, it doesn't even seem physically possible that these guys can do this. And that's one possession of just one game. So how have you seen athletes have to, I guess, change, adapt? And what do you work on with athletes knowing how the modern game of basketball has changed so much, is asking so much of their bodies?
Great question. Yeah, because the game has changed in that context drastically again from even when I was watching finals games with the Jazz Bulls, right? It more than anything, it is a fast-paced game. It is a
Yeah.
much faster paced game. The court hasn't changed much, the dynamics, the rim size, the ball size, none of that stuff, obviously. But these athletes, I was just last week covering Formula Zero, which is Damian Lillard's camp in Phoenix.
Yeah.
That he has an invite only, to the top, these recruits that are seniors in high school or freshmen at these big power conference colleges. And I'm amazed. I've never seen high school and freshmen this genetically gifted. Like it's coming out of nowhere. Like truly, it's like these kids are so lengthy, so explosive. Like they can jump through the gym. It's insane. But the pace of the game, the skill, we can't knock those things. These athletes have now just have. I mean, again, thinking of the tech we were just talking about, it's getting to be so advanced, not just in the tech and our resources, but the game, because these athletes are more skilled. And I'm not saying we're more skilled in comparison to a Michael Jordan, some of these guys, but there are a lot of things where these athletes are just coming with their genetics, with just their natural gifted skills. And argue with it or not, yes, they're now specializing in sport at a much younger age, which I live on both sides of the fence of what I believe in that. But this game is evolving so rapidly with how impressive these athletes are. Like it's just, I don't even know how to fully describe it. We're watching it. It's a beautiful craft out there, but this isn't a slow paced game where we're very physical. Obviously the way that the game is officiated, all the different rules, and going from whether it's European basketball and FIBA, like Luka coming over, making his comments, like it's never been easier for him to score because he was, raised playing a different style of FIBA, which is a lot more physical. So there's constantly changes going on in the style of play. And so for that, you have to be at the forefront of that. You have to understand the game enough. You have to understand not just the game, you have to understand their position, the style we want to play as a team, and work with the coaches and try to put all those pieces of the puzzle together. And that's not even looking at the individual athlete. We also, in our roles, have to have a very player-centric approach, which means we have to look at every player
specifically. What do they do well? Yeah. What do they bring to the table? What do they need to work on? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And well, there's that, right? We make our strengths even stronger. And then, when and where you can, you work on your blind spots or your weaknesses. But you also have to look at what red flags they have. In my world, I have to look at little things like it's like predictions. It's like trying to read into the future of the stock market. So for us, we're looking at these injuries of like past injuries, because injuries, I look at them, they're a history lesson. Like they will repeat themselves. So when you have an injury, it's not saying it's a guarantee. But for example, if an athlete has torn his ACL, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the probability of them tearing their ACL again, even partially, drastically increases year 2 from return, not year 1. So when everybody's worried about their first year coming back, you start to get a little comfortable, complacent. You start or stop training, the lengthy rehab that you've done to get back. And then if they have a great first year coming back, okay, great. But then the second year, they're not working as hard again. They're not as robust, all these different things. And so there are a lot of things that's helping us, not just on the changes on the court and the games and those evolutions, but the data that we're getting, the quality of the images we're able to get now, every little thing from the tech and the medical industry is helping us make more informed decisions. And unfortunately, from the coach's viewpoint of that, sometimes I have to remind them that these athletes aren't soft. These athletes
Yeah.
aren't weaker than they are. They're not, they have more information at their disposal. So, I mean, Michael Jordan played what, 12 years? I know he took a break in between. I think he played 12 seasons. Like, if you look at what he did in that span of time, I might be off by a little bit, but LeBron James is going into year 23. He's going into his 23rd season, which is almost double that. So we're able to now prepare these athletes to not only meet these demands of the game, but hopefully excel right above them, but to do it for longer. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Like, could you imagine what Michael Jordan's career would have been like had he played 23 competitive seasons?
Mm-hmm.
Guy might have had 15 championships. Who knows?
And what does a player want? They don't want the first contract. What do they want? They want the second contract, right? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
And you get to kind of help partner alongside them. Obviously, NFL a different beast. You can get cut at any time, but helping get guys to those next contracts is that's obviously not your job, but that's probably part of it for you. That's really great to kind of give guys those longevity.
Yeah, so there's obviously, needless to say, all that, there's a lot that goes into it. You have to know the sport, you have to know the athlete, you have to know almost so many different layers of this onion to be able to put together the right plan, the right program, and then we're just talking about, I mean, this is just what we throw on paper, that doesn't even come down to the art of it, which is connecting with the athlete and to all the nuances that go into actually bringing this to life at a high level. So it's a lot of fun. Trust me, it's a lot of work, but you find out pretty quickly if you're made for this industry, if you're built for it, if you love it or not, because, it's definitely demanding.
So let's focus the lens a little bit kind of into GCU specifically. I know you just finished up your first year here, and I'm sure, again, you're kind of itching to continue to build on that and really kind of get a little more comfortable. But I want to just get to know a little bit. Obviously, we spoke with Coach Jack. How does what you do interact with Coach Jack? Are you guys putting plans together personally? How do your jobs interact so we can kind of begin to put all that together from a fan perspective to understand how this works?
Yeah, great question. So in the college landscape, we're still looking at small groups, which is very it's a sigh of relief for me because, at the highest level in pro sports, I mean, you're dealing with, instead of a staff of 2 or 3 in our area, you've got 12 to 15. So obviously when you got more cooks in the kitchen, it sounds great, but it's actually a lot more challenging than you would think to get everybody on the same page. And so here at GCU, that's comforting, but my role as a director of sports medicine is to come in and I kind of work and oversee the entire university. So the full scope of all 500 plus student athletes, whatever the exact number is. And so we have 11 full-time athletic trainers, which is amazing because you'd be surprised even going into a much higher conference like the Mountain West. We're pretty competitive. Like, they've done such a great job at GCU building, this framework, if you will. I put a lot of credit to that for like Zach Farrell and those who have been here for a few years, really building this before I even got here. And so, but when it comes, I make that point because this first year, I wasn't like boots on the ground day in and day out with basketball. I know that sounds crazy, but it was like, for me, I really had to get an idea and observe how the system works entirely. So
getting feedback.
I was kind of all over the place. I was getting to know a lot of new people, just how the NCAA works, from policies and procedures to the day in of everything. I got coaches in my office every day, whether it's soccer, tennis. And as you can imagine, like, there's no way I can get to know all 500 student athletes, but all 500 student athletes have 20 head coaches. And, so this last year, I took a big step just getting to understand the entire landscape. And this year now I'll be one step closer to working with the basketball programs. Obviously I've got a little bit of a background with Winston just being hired as well on the women's basketball side. And he's USA 3x3 guy as well. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, so this year I will be a lot more involved with basketball now that I've got a lot more, of my legs underneath me. And so, but to answer your question, we've always had a head athletic trainer for men's basketball, and he and Jack work very close together as they, also are the funnel to Coach Bryce Drew. And so they've done a phenomenal job because you've seen nothing but success the last number of years at GCU. But, the exciting and sometimes nerve-wracking thing is you're going to a much bigger conference. So, that
Yeah.
opens the door wide open for what potentially is going to be this year. So, and then just the landscape itself, even if we were in the exact same conference, nothing's guaranteed. This is what we love about sports, because the changes of the portal and the transfer, just everything transfer of these teams, you almost can expect a brand new team every year, which I don't know if I love, because it's like Tom Brady said once
Yeah.
in the podcast, we're not building programs anymore, we're building teams. And so that's a little disheartening to look at it that way, but it's also the reality. You know what I mean? There's you hope that you bring in a new group of guys, or the few that stayed, and you can build instantly this camaraderie and this character between the entire roster, and prepare guys. Because again, for somebody like Jack and Bryce Drew, I've said this for all year, because my mind is always in basketball. I've spent so much time in basketball. But I think for those two people specifically, what a demanding, difficult job it is to be successful, or to be measured. Like, how do you measure their
Yeah.
success? Because I know the win-loss column is the easiest way, but for Jack, for example, your job is to create resilient athletes, and you're supposed to create programs, strength and conditioning, that lead to positive adaptations that hopefully avoid injuries, but not just that, accelerate performance, right? And that's hard to do, from what I know, when you're only going to have some of these athletes for 6 to 7 months. Like,
Yeah, and that's
you
before we
just
talk NCAA calendars, and
right.
I'm obviously, I don't know a ton about that, but I know there's different times you can and can't be with them. He mentioned a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about those restrictions and having to get creative, so that's another interesting hurdle. But at the end of the day, no one, let's just say on a Saturday in January, you lose by 25, and the guys are huffing and puffing, and that's credit to Coach Jack and what he's been able to do and kind of build.
Yeah. Well, and then Bryce Drew, same thing. Like, if you're a coach, he's under the same microscope and
Yep.
requirements of, like, an 8 hour work week, which coaches, most coaches split it up. It's like, we're going to spend 4 on the court with practice. We're going to spend 4 in the weight room with Jack. We're trying to build these guys up as fast as we can, but in a safe manner, because you can't, you can't microwave, these guys' results. Like, you just can't. Like, again, we talked on recovery a little bit, but there's only so much you can do. And it's not like, it's unintelligent or negligent, really, to beat these athletes into the ground to a level where it's like, man, there's no way they're going to get up for a workout tomorrow or 2 days from now. Because
Mm-hmm.
usually we've all experienced soreness in the gym, right? If you don't go to the gym for months or a year, and you go have one decent workout, I mean, you're not walking
See ya. Yeah.
for a few days. So it's the I'll say this, like, there was a rule of thumb in the NBA, because it's such a long season and all the different demands, but the healthiest teams typically starts with the head coach. And that means, like, how well they structure these things, how well they structure their on-court workouts. How now, obviously, we're talking contact versus non-contact. There's so many different paths I can go down from my experience of what I know about injuries we can either prevent, mitigate to some extent, or if you truly drew the short stick, and you have so many injuries that are not, just direct contact, just things. It's like, there's no way, no matter how strong, how robust, intelligent our
Yeah.
plan was. Sometimes that's just what you have to run into, and so there's a lot there, but I do know Jack and Coach Bryce Drew have obviously worked together for a number of years. They're very loyal to each other. They have a great working relationship, and so a lot of that success starts with those two in being on the same page. And I think there's a big element to that. I really do. I think that, like, Jack's position is kind of a central point to the whole hub of how things run, because these athletes have to come in. And that's the other thing. You might get athletes that come in and have never worked out before. Now you start adding some of these European
Yep.
players who maybe have never spent much time in the weight room at all. You have to literally, I don't want to say dummy it down, but you have to summarize this
Really
down to
explain it.
make
Yeah.
this a starting point for them. You know what I mean? So you have to be pretty experienced, and it is an art form to be able to create a lot of these adaptations and create these opportunities for athletes to get better. But it starts by meeting them where they're at. And sometimes this is where you truly pray that our recruiting and scouting is on point, and that we can bring in some really good, talented. Yes, of course, every team is fighting for the most talented, but you also want to bring in high character athletes who are willing to put in the work. You know what I mean? Because I've been around those guys too who have all the talent in the world, and they
Yep.
didn't make it to that second contract because they don't have the work ethic and they're out doing all the things they shouldn't be doing instead of working on their craft. So there's
And now
definitely
we've
a
and now
lot
we've
of
brought
things that
Coach
go into
Mark
it.
into the fold. Look at this. The Behind the Program series. We're connecting all our dots here. We're talking about Mark recruiting the right guys, Coach Jack putting the work in as well with you. Look at that. We've kind of rounded everything off. Next thing I really want to ask you about, you see this day in and day out, but fans, we really don't get to see it. A player gets hurt, and as fans, the only thing we're going to ask is when are they coming back, right? That's the only thing that is really on a fan's mind. We don't see the hours, the days, the weeks that build in whatever setting that is that's required to get them back. So can you take us into those rooms, those moments for those athletes? I feel like maybe every person's had a minor injury, maybe needed some version of physical therapy, and we get a little massage. And I know when I've got it done, I'm like screaming, the pain and the sweat equity and the time required to go in. Can you kind of shine a little bit of a light on that? If you have a personal example too of someone who you've worked with that you think would be great as well, just the time that's required to get back on the court to kind of do the thing they love.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it starts with whether or not the injury was the significance of it, right? If this is mild, moderate to severe, and severe meaning like, something that's public knowledge, maybe I can just shine on, which is like a Dario Saric tearing his ACL and within the first 15 minutes of game one of the NBA Finals. Talk about like the ultimate just break you down, right? Like you've worked your whole career and you get to this point and then something like
You
that
might lose the
happens
whole
and
next season potentially too,
well, you did. Yeah, he did. Or right now, Halliburton, Damian Lillard,
Yeah.
players. It's like, when this happens late in the year, and this is an Achilles rupture or an ACL. I mean, that timeline is roughly 12 months. I mean, we're talking things that people just don't realize go into it because you said it. Like that's basically what coaches think too. Is I just want this to be a binary, black or white. Is he in or is he out? How long is it going to be? Is this a week or is this 7 months? And it's not easy for anybody, a coach, a player, a parent. It's psychological warfare, which goes into why I've started to add these additional degrees. Like I told you, I've
Yeah.
pivoted towards is because there's so much more to it than to just think I'm a medicine man and I just rub my hands together and Mr.
Yep.
Miyagi and do all these tricks of the trade. There are things that we can massage, meaning like we can massage things enough to maybe get them back a few days early if and then there's just the things that we've got to lean on, knowing physiology, anatomy, and all the things from a healing biological process that we just, again, I tell people all the time, if I could get you back that much quicker, like if I could get an ACL down to 4 months instead of 12 months, trust me, with all due respect, I would not be working for GCU or the NBA because I'd be a multi-trillion-dollar
You'd have
man.
solved.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we just you have to take stock and inventory of what the situation is, and if this is a mild, even a mild ankle sprain, this is the most common thing, or a jammed finger, something that's the most common thing. It's a rite of passage in basketball. Everybody's going to tweak their ankle at some point in time. You hope it's not severe, but even a mild ankle sprain, if it's let's say it's a week before conference championship goes on, right? A mild ankle sprain, depending on the athlete. Now, even the athlete, they're either swellers or non-swellers. We got guys like John Morant who tweaks their ankle, who looks like he just got shot out there. He's just crawling on the ground. It looks like he's
Yeah.
dying in pain. Guy comes back out in the second half and he's jumping through the roof and he plays the next 10 games. But then there's guys who swell, who are just their genetics, just their makeup, how they are. They naturally swell.
Interesting.
There,
Okay.
there are other factors involved that people don't see, they don't know. And honestly, a mild ankle sprain, depending on some of these factors, could be the difference between a guy playing 3, 4 days after a lot of acute treatment and really, not dealing with that swelling to 14 days. And, again, it's not that these players are quote unquote soft or there's something wrong with them, but,
Yeah, I don't
you
know,
know,
but the Twitter doctors online, they usually seem to have those injuries figured out. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Twitter doctors, but they always know this guy should be back. Why is he not back?
yeah, no, I mean there truly is always more to it. Again, like
Yeah.
I said, injuries are a history lesson. You don't know if this guy's tweaked ankle is his 15th time he's done it since junior high. You don't know, you know what I mean? Like there's just a guy like Kevin Durant who, tweaks his ankle and I look at him and this guy's been playing for 17 years and this is the 50th time he's tweaked his ankle and like some of those ligaments are just so just like beat up over time that takes even longer to heal, if that makes sense, just
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a new accustomed to those stressors. So there's just so many things that even I don't know until I learn this athlete, who they are, how they naturally respond, because it's not like they intentionally say, oh, I want to swell. Like you got to realize the science behind pain is a signal. It's all it is. Your brain is telling you something to be aware of. It's an alarm clock. It's an alarm system. It's telling you like, hey, stop sign, like be aware of this because sports are not normal. I know people are so adamant of being a fan and they love it. I've spent my entire life. I don't know anything other than sports, truly. But sports are not normal for the human body.
Yeah.
Like if you really look at this and to look at a 7 foot DeAndre Ayton and all the things he can do, he's one of the best movers I've ever seen at his height. Like he could
Yep.
he could be a track 100-yard sprinter like easily.
And
But
TV doesn't even tell the whole story, right? I mean, you get to see these
no,
guys day in and day out.
yeah. Yeah, but sports are not normal. Like what we put ourselves through and we think is normal is not. Like it's just not to go out there and beat yourself up like in football. Again, I played football most of my life. And you watch these guys at SEC and the NFL, they go through certain most positions on average 30 or 40 minor car crashes is what their body goes through just in a game. Like this is not normal. Like, but we've normalized it in obviously North America. And so I
And
have to
and
take all
capitalized
these
on it as
things.
well. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But I mean, on my end, I'm trying to build these guys back up, whereas Jack's doing a good job trying to build them up as well. But sometimes Jack's role, you got to break them down to build them up. It's like they
Mm-hmm.
say the skyscrapers you see in New York City, like at first you had to dig a hole before you went up. You got to break them down first. But that's why it's so hard for him to do a good job and to build these guys up to a capacity to withstand the whole season, not get injured, be physically conditioned, and to play at a high level the entire season. It's really hard to do when you don't have that much time to do that. But, if I have to step in, unfortunately, it's like being the Grim Reaper. Like you got to step in when something's already been broken down, when something's wrong, because that's just what I have to do. And sometimes I have to push players a little bit. Sometimes I have to pull them back because knowing what I know that they might be putting themselves in harm's way. So to your point, behind the scenes, all the things that go on, we're always doing what's best for the athlete's best interest. But sports aren't normal, and I know we all want to see those athletes get out as quick as possible, whether it's SEC Alabama's star quarterback or our players. Like we want them out there. I want
Yeah.
them out there, and that's obviously the bottom line. That's the same goal, whether it's Coach Jack or myself. It's just a matter of doing it in a manner that it's as safe as possible for the athlete.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing that I want to ask you about is, getting kind of covering the team. I think one thing I really noticed was around February when you start to see things up close, the guys come in for the press conference. Jacoby Cole's still dealing with his sickness, and Ray Harrison's coming in and he's got a thing around his knee and it's his leg, and then Tyon's still Can you just give us a little bit of an idea? I know you've spent a ton of time around basketball players. When you come down the stretch, what that looks like and where players' bodies at. You talked about it a little bit. just what they are going through. And then at the end of the day, that's really that time where you actually have to turn it up. So kind of talk about those two things being in contrary to each other.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to put it is just organized chaos, right? Like, I mean, you're these microaggressions that you're going through game in, game after game after game. It's definitely putting stress on the body, and like I said, sports not being normal. It's not normal for the physical body to go through this day after day. Now, what I love about the college setting is there's a little bit more structure to having a systematic week, if you will, to play, let's say, Thursday, Saturday is pretty nice,
Yeah.
even if you're on the road, considering
Get
you
in a
play on
rhythm.
average. Yeah, you play on average 3.5 to 4, 4 games a week in the NBA with the travel. So it's not as demanding, but it's pretty demanding for these young physical bodies that the athletes have. And so the longer we get into the season, these guys, trust me, they're not 100%. There's not a single athlete out there on the court. And I have to remind our athletes this, not just physically, but mentally. There's not a single one of those guys that are
It's
out
a
there
good point.
100%.
Yeah.
Like they really may have 70% in the tank right now. Now the difference makers, the separators, if you will, are those that acknowledge that, but they're giving 100+% of that 70% in the tank, if you will. So sometimes you're going to have just natural dogs that just know how to do that naturally. Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
push and pull a little bit, but that's also where a coach like Bryce Drew, that's his art form, is to
Press the
be
right
able to do
buttons
that
at the
as
right
well.
time. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
And that kind of takes me, you talk about the rhythm, and this will be our final question here. You talk about the rhythm for college basketball. It usually is pretty kind, especially in the conference schedule. Thursday, Saturday, usually something like that. GCU has been very successful over the last 5 years. 4 out of the last 5 years have won their conference tournament in Vegas. That is such a unique beast. 3 games in 3 nights, 4 games in 4 nights, whatever that might look like. Mountain West, I think, has the ability this year to be potentially 5 games, I think, in 5 nights, depending on how they set up the tournament. GCU obviously has had a ton of success. What do you think, in your opinion, goes into a successful conference tournament week? Because it's so different than everything else.
Yeah. And man, you have to hit that wave and ride it like at the right time. There's so many things from a vertical alignment standpoint that just need to go well from, the realm I operate in. You're just like, man, have we done everything possible to be as healthy as we can? And not just that, like healthy meaning a whole, like all of our main rotation players are available, because that's like they say the quote is the best ability is
Is
availability,
availability. Yep.
right? So are we in that position? Great, we're successful, we have a chance. You hope that that's the case, because like same thing, game 7 of the finals, like nobody wants to see that go down, and like you're playing without one of the best players. Like even the Thunder are thinking to themselves a little bit like, man, like this was amazing, we won a championship, but like I
Wanted to
wish that
go
I would
get
have
it
beat them whole. And
ourselves. Yeah.
so, but yeah, so my experience, again, even the reverse sweep of being up 2-0 in the finals and then getting swept 4-0 and losing it, like that came after what I didn't know in the middle of it all was we broke a record of winning 9 playoff games in a row. Like, which at
Wow.
the time I didn't even realize it, but when we lost our first game to the Clippers in the conference, the Western Conference Championship, they had a big old story that came out the next day that the Suns' record's over. And I was like, I had no idea. But you win 9 games in a row, like you're riding that wave. Like it's like you're unstoppable. It didn't matter if it was back to backs, the travel, the stress, all that. But then you lose one game, and that's the exciting part for me with the college setup. Like it's one and done March Madness. Like you're not playing the best of
Yep.
7. That would be exciting. Like, but at the same time, that's not it. So it's really important that you do everything you possibly can to put your team in a position to succeed, like physically, mentally, like just strategically, like from the technical, tactical aspect. Um, so you're sitting here, you're wrapping your brain around like, are we doing everything we possibly can do that our team can be successful? And you hope that, again, with just trying to figure out a group of guys in 6, 7, 8 months, that come those championship weeks, that you know them well enough to create some type of a strategy with how you travel, how you practice, how you recover them, what you feed them, everything. It's like, do we know our guys so well? Because let's say, for example, even feeding them, just a side note, let's say half your team's vegan, like that changes everything, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
with preparing these things. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but you hope that you're bringing in the right guys that are just absolute dogs. And that, as a coach, you're putting your best foot forward with a plan and strategy to, let them hit the ground running, because I've seen it done so many different ways, and it's kind of like they say, all models are wrong, but some are effective, and that changes year in and year out. So if you got a coach who only coaches one style of basketball, like this is his program, this is his, for example, like the 7 seconds or less, like that doesn't work if you try that 30 years in a row. You know what I mean? And that works when you have the right personnel and the
Correct.
timing with me. So that's obviously where coach has a big burden on his shoulders, figuring that out year in, year out with the new players that he has joined his team. And we're honored, and it's exciting to be a part of the support staff to try to help play our part in this and to get them to that availability part. And then, like Jack's role, like not just be available, but then to thrive when the lights go on and you're at the biggest stage, whether it's 3 nights in a row or 5 nights in a row, like you're preparing for those opportunities. That's exactly what you want.
Yeah. Would you say, I mean, you allude to it, that process starts in November, the confidence, right, in that work. And that can you talk about that? Two more questions, because you just said that and I was thinking of it. Talk about the mental part, momentum, and how you've seen that affected things. Cause obviously you can't get away from father time, age, your body, but talk about the power of momentum and what you've seen and how you contrast that with, like, oh yeah, you do have the basic anatomy and you can't do crazy things, but momentum really is kind of this intangible thing.
Yeah, so I mean, from coaching, it's not even November. I mean, the workouts that you're doing in the summertime when these players officially sign and join the team, you're whether it's individual workouts or you're just starting to get, within that 8-hour work week, you're trying to build some camaraderie in the weight room and everything, where it goes far beyond the court. It really does. Like, again, like these teams, even at the highest level, from my experience in the NBA, the recent Suns, call me crazy, but like there's endless talent. These teams across the entire NBA are so talented, but if they're not connecting off the court as well as they are on the court, I mean, that talent's just being wasted. And that then the investments of the dollars that go into bringing this talent's being wasted. So you've got to find a way from a psychological perspective as a coach to get these guys to have a lot of unison, to have a lot of pride, a lot of working in the same, swimming and rowing that boat in the same direction at the same time, rather than being off sync and going in circles. Because when it comes down to those big games, coaches want talent, trust me. But what they want probably more is intelligence. Like they want a high IQ player, because fatigue sets in. And if we got guys who really aren't prepared, like let's say a guy gets injured week one and he misses 70% of the season, but we get him back at the end of the year and he's that talented, we want him to play, but he's not in game shape yet. He hasn't meet the demands. And then we get into these big, intense games and he's hitting fatigue in the fourth quarter. Well, when you start hitting fatigue physically, physiologically, you start making poor decisions. That's where you start to see
Yeah,
a
it
lot of
affects the
these things
mental.
happen. So, oh, absolutely. So there's a big mental block and a big mental preparation component, which is what I really wanted to dive into the last number of years, is to see how that can impact the game, how that it can impact routines, their training style, like all the various things. And so I joke and tell everybody in that realm, whether it's the head coach, the strength coach, you name it, we're all walking psychologists in our own right mind. We play a role in preparing these athletes into building into the culture we
Yeah,
have and the
every
fabric.
interaction, every
Yeah,
practice, it adds up. Yeah.
yeah, it really does.
Okay, I want to end with this. Someone who Lopes fans really, really love, and I don't know if you've got to spend a ton of time around him. Coach Jack has worked a lot with Dennis Evans. He is a seven, kind of depends where you look. I've seen 7'2", I've seen 7 foot. Every time I see him, my jaw drops. I mean, he is so tall, and we're hearing rumors about him being able to move incredibly well. Could you talk a little bit about the challenges that come with, let's just say, someone like Dennis Evans, and then also maybe how excited you are to see some of that fruit, if you've been working alongside Coach Jack with him at all, see that kind of come to light?
Yeah, I mean, I was able to watch, I mean, obviously a lot of the summer workouts and to see these guys, work and build. It's exciting to see them first come in and to see what they're capable of doing. You really are. You're watching like a raw ball of clay like evolve, you know what I mean, as they kind of get more time with the coach and so obviously he's been gifted with amazing genetics, right? The height and all that, but at the same time, it's this is not a fair analogy, but sometimes this is where my mind goes. We all love like dogs, right? Like physical, like pets, but like when you see a Great Dane compared to, you know what I mean, like a little dog and just their ability, like the speed, how quickly they
Yeah.
move. Like I've had coaches all the time ask me, even going back to DeAndre Ayton, it's like, man, why does it seem like it takes him a few extra minutes to get more warmed up than this player, or to get going in a game more than this player, or to all these. I mean, most of us can, myself included, can't even without the empathy mindset on, we can't begin to understand what it's like to be in these guys' physical structures, like, and to move like they do, like, and just to be
Just
7 foot
life.
two and
Yeah.
try to keep Kyrie in front of you. Like, they're so talented. Like, I give them so much credit, but even more so than most athletes, because those physical systems that they're operating with, these muscles, these tendons, these bones, every little thing that they have to do to move and be extremely athletic and successful as an athlete, it's not easy for them. It really isn't. And people just think that they should just be able to move like Kyrie or any other basketball player out there. It's not.
Yeah.
It is extremely demanding for them to be able to perform at a high level at this level.
That's man. Everyone's really excited. I mean, again, I've seen him working out a lot with Coach Jack, and you kind of see it. And man, he can kind of shoot it. It's like, oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
Lopes fans are really, really excited for that. Well, Brady, we really, really appreciate your time. We know you have a lot going on, and I know you're excited to get back to GCU and continue building this thing. There's so much unknown ahead of kind of everybody, and I think there is so much beauty in that. It sounds like that's where you love to operate, anyways. So, figure things out as you go. So we really, really appreciate your time, and I know the fans do. So thank you so much for taking some time out.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm excited for this year. It's around the corner, so I appreciate you highlighting me as an opportunity to just kind of talk on what we do. And I'm excited to get to know more of the fan bases and the team this year.
Thank you.